Let's have a good battle, Leonard said, looking at Tyrone. Sure, Tyrone replied. Who do you think will win? Of course, Leon will win. What a silly question. But Tyrone Martel is no pushover. Many speculated about the match, but no one could confidently predict the outcome between the two. In the last end-year tournament, Raylan, Tyrone, and Leonard demonstrated comparable strength. Tyrone lost to Raylan, and Leonard also fell to her. As a result, Leonard held the rank 2 position, but his loss had been a razor-thin margin. Damien and Amelia were discussing the upcoming match when Asher approached from behind. Yo, that was a solid fight. Damien raised his thumb in congratulations. Congrats, Amelia echoed. Thanks, Asher responded, his expression unchanging, as he settled down to watch the stage. What's your take? Who'll come out on top? Damien asked, just as the match was set to begin. Who knows, Asher replied. Though Asher's face was expressionless, the intensity of his headache kept escalating, showing no signs of abating. Any average individual would have been writhing in agony, but Asher had become numb to pain. Like father, like son, Xerax remarked aloud. He's quite adept at currying the public's favor, Xerax said, turning to look at Osbert. Two-faced, that was word that came to Xerax's mind when he looked at Osbert. He found it funny how people believed this man was way better than the elite families. Osbert's eyes met Xerax's briefly upon hearing the comment. It was evident that the World Association enjoyed the public's support. This association was tasked with maintaining order and regulating the elite families. It was also clear that the World Association was in contention with the 3 most powerful elite families. Osbert was aware that Xerax was targeting him, especially since he had sided with Farnes, facilitating the entire successor candidate process. Had they all resisted, Farnes would have had to take a step back, and Xerax could have deferred the matter to the forthcoming High Council meeting. Yet, thanks to Osbert's support, Farnes secured the full backing of the World Association. Tyrone's aura surged as he gripped a 2-handed long sword. Leonard, in contrast, calmly invoked his aura, bracing for the duel's commencement. The stage had been reinforced, tailored to withstand the might of 2 rank B hunters. Begin, the referee declared. Instantly, Leonard twisted his wrist and deftly flicked his sword upward, releasing a massive wind torrent towards Tyrone. Tyrone remained steadfast. With a precise slash, he cleaved the gale in 2, allowing it to dissipate behind him. Quite impressive, Leonard remarked with a smile. Ads by Pub Future. Both vanished, only to reappear at the center of the stage where their swords met with a clash. To first and even most second years, their movements were little more than a blur. The rapid exchanges of their swords, leading up to this lock, were nearly imperceptible. He's improved, Tyrone realized, sensing Leonard's enhanced strength. As their swords remained interlocked, Leonard slightly tilted his blade, aiming to break free. However, before Leonard could swing at him, Tyrone quickly retreated, increasing the distance between them. I didn't realize he was this strong, Damien commented aloud, observing Leonard. They're both beyond the level of an average B-rank hunter, Amelia noted. Well, he is the son of the World Association's chairman, Damien added. Is that the best the vice president of the student council has? Leonard taunted, parrying Tyrone's assaults. Don't worry, I've yet more to unveil, Tyrone responded, taking another step back. Martel's second sword, Tyrone murmured, his long sword. Beginning to glow. Is that the ember art of the Martel family? A few students whispered. A flame enveloped the blade, changing its hue to a vibrant orange. Leonard's smile widened in response. Third Remmer, Leonard intoned. An unfamiliar flame emerged, winding up from Leonard's arm and enveloping his sword. The Remmer art, the sword technique employed by the Turvian family, was identical to that which the current chairman of the World Association wielded. This display naturally piqued the interest of many students and even guild recruiters. Let's determine whose flame burns brighter, Leonard challenged, lunging at Tyrone. His feet seared the ground beneath, flames dancing around his limbs. The third Remmer technique allowed the user to envelop their body in an element, reinforcing them. Using third Remmer, Osbert could melt even the bones of the most formidable SS-rank monsters with just his bare hands. However, third Remmer underwent a transformation when paired with a weapon, turning any armament into a lethal instrument. Tyrone's eyes widened as he invoked Martel's second sword, merging his aura with the fire element. Such a feat was typically reserved for S-rank individuals or higher, but the Martel bloodline ability made it far more accessible for him than for most. I often ponder what you might have achieved had you possessed that bloodline ability, Silvus mused to Dexter. I've wondered the same, Dexter admitted with a chuckle. Indeed, the Martel family's bloodline ability had fostered generations of exceptional weapon makers and craftsmen. Their primary enterprise centered around this. Yet, at their core, they were hunter family, so typically only the Martel branch members engaged in these artisan professions. Within the Artisans Association, the Martels enjoyed unique prestige, freely coming and going without a care. However, Dexter Wright eclipsed the Martel's renown when he showcased his innovative creations and skills. Tyrone's sword met Leonard's in a fiery clash as their flames intertwined. Clang, clang. With each clash, the intensity of their flames amplified. By the third collision, Leonard was slightly pushed back as Tyrone channeled his might into a singular strike. Yet, Tyrone's expression was marred by frustration. Remember, Tyrone Martel, aim only for the third rank. We want no confrontations with Osbert Tervian, the elder of the Martel family had advised Tyrone a week before the end-year tournament. Why should I listen to your advice? Tyrone retorted, pausing his training. If it weren't for your blunder, we wouldn't be in this predicament, the elder responded sharply. Tyrone's fists tightened, struggling to come to terms with the elder's words. A mistake on my part. Tyrone fumed internally, keeping his emotions under wraps. It's a direct order from the family head. If you wish to remain a part of the family, adhere to it, the elder declared before ending the call. Despite being one of the most promising talents in his lineage, Tyrone found himself in a dilemma. To satisfy his family's wishes, he had to feign defeat. I should have seen this coming, Tyrone mused, a wry chuckle escaping him. In the ongoing match, Tyrone was acutely aware of the challenge Leonard posed. He could feel the flames around Leonard slowly affecting him despite Tyrone having a body that was resistant to fire the most. It was because of the Martel bloodline ability as it made their bodies resistant to fire to a certain degree, but against Leonard, he was still feeling it, contemporary romance. As if I could easily best him, Tyrone conceded internally. Leonard was a tough opponent for Raylan, who was rank 1, and what his family wanted him to do was to not make any complications. With Leonard Tervian, the Martel family maintained neutrality, affiliating with no factions. They were renowned weapon manufacturers, and their principal client was none other than the World Association. If Tyrone really wanted, he could push Leonard to his limits to make his chances of winning against Raylan go lower. It was a dirty tactic to do, but Tyrone was already warned to not do anything stupid like that. Osbert Tervian was coming to the end-year tournament himself, and the last thing they wanted was a rift between the Martel family and the World Association. Tyrone amplified his aura, determined to at least have a fair fight. I don't care if I lose, Tyrone thought, anger swelling within him. Leonard perceived a change in the swiftness of Tyrone's swordplay. What a madman, Leonard mused. Tyrone's speed with the two-handed sword was comparable to Leonard's, but his flames were less potent. Leonard knew he had a stronger affinity for fire and took pride in that fact. Fourth tremor, Leonard intoned. The flames around his limbs became fainter but more intense, augmenting Leonard's power. Bam, bam. Raylan observed the bout. Leonard was employing the very technique that had troubled her in their previous match. This will be challenging for him, Raylan murmured, aware that Tyrone lacked defensive items, making victory a distant prospect. You seem unscathed by my flame, Leonard remarked as their swords clashed. But this is as far as you go, Leonard declared. As he twisted his blade, a glint appeared in his eyes. This technique, one he'd learned from Osbert, had the potency to take down a rank B monster in just one move. The ambient temperature rose as the flames sharply concentrated on the edge of Leonard's blade. Flame slash, Leonard intoned, slashing his sword downward. Tyrone, despite the burning sensation on his skin and the force pushing him back, retained his composure. Martel's fourth sword, he murmured. His flames began to flow in reverse, effectively countering Leonard's assault. As Tyrone neared the stage's edge, he halted, with the attack veering off to his side, liquefying the stage around them. Not bad, Leonard acknowledged with a grin, swinging his sword through the air. Yet, burn marks marred his armor and skin. Anyone else in Tyrone's position would have either incurred severe injuries or instinctively evaded such an onslaught. But you are aware, fire isn't my primary element, Leonard remarked, smiling as the flames around him intensified. The gusts grew fiercer, amplifying the fiery aura encircling Leonard's feet. Previous chapter is fixed. Sorry for the mess up. Of course, I know, Tyrone replied as he slammed his sword into the ground. Flames erupted near his sword, wrapping around his sword making his aura stronger and fiercer than before. The more they burn, the stronger they get, one of the guild evaluators spoke. The information about the bloodline ability is rare, but from what I've heard, the more heat they absorb, the stronger they become, he added. The reason why many elite families were still standing strong was because of their bloodline ability. Although even people outside the elite families had their own bloodline abilities, they were not comparable to the ones these elite families possessed. But the chances of possessing a bloodline ability were quite rare, even if you were from these elite families. And even after possessing it, the power of the bloodline was different for everyone, even if they came from the same bloodline. For Tyrone, his body was indeed like a furnace where he could exchange his own flames to become stronger, but it was one of the effects. But it had to be Tyrone's own fire that was created by his mana. Although his external body could resist fire elements to a certain degree, his internal body could only absorb the flames he made. Wow, I never saw such fights at the mage associations, Jacob said, looking at the match. Mages are cooler, Jennifer said, puffing her cheeks. Because Jacob was not a mage, he didn't see a lot of weapon users fight with each other, so this was a new experience for him. Jennifer and Jacob were raised around mages, but in reality, the amount of mages compared to weapon masters was low. So, in World Academy, seeing so many weapon users fighting was a new experience for them. Seeing that among all the rank 1 students, none of them were mages surprised Jennifer the most, who thought that mages were the strongest. But in reality, the mages that Jennifer and Jacob would meet in the Mage Association were some of the best in the world and have honed their magic for years. Leonard, on the stage, changes his stance to a different one. The Rema art he showed till now was something that allowed him to mix fire elements into his swordsmanship, but now he was using a different one. Wind element was one of the few elements that every swordsman wanted because it could allow them to attain a speed that was normally impossible. His movement changed as Tyrone felt the weight of Leonard's strikes had changed. They were much lighter, so they were easier to block but more hard to predict. With the brightness of the flame and Leonard manipulating the wind around him, it made many blind spots for Tyrone. But despite that, it was surprising to see Tyrone Martel block Leonard's sword so fast, so many times with his long sword. In the VIP room for the student council. "See, I told you our vice president is strong," one of the student council students spoke. Ads by Pub Future. "But Leonard Tarvian is getting faster," the president of the discipline committee spoke out. "Tyrone's strength is his insane reaction time, that's why I lost to him," he said while looking at the stage. "But right now, Leonard is slowly increasing his speed to create more pressure so that Tyrone makes a mistake. It doesn't look good for us," he thought in his head. He was rank 4 in the 3rd year, so he had sparred with both Leonard and Tyrone, and he could see that Leonard was much stronger than he had anticipated. Since the 3rd year started, it was hard to estimate someone's strength because all of them had entered the trials ground. The gain they received was different for everyone, depending on their experience inside. But he was sure that Leonard wasn't showing all his cards just yet. Leonard was smiling while Tyrone's eyes were focused on Leonard's sword. "He is getting pushed back." Some of the students were shocked. They could see slowly, but Tyrone was getting pushed back. The attacks that Leonard was making were lighter, but at the moment of impact, a burst of wind increased the speed of the sword's strike high for a short time. It was hard to fight like this because if Leonard lost control over his manipulation of wind element, he could lose the sword in his hand and would instantly be defeated. And if he were fighting like this, then that meant he was confident in himself. "Fourth Rema, Gale," Leonard whispered as he stepped back once. Tyrone didn't want to give space to Leonard, who was already in the lead, so he pushed forward as he saw Leonard turning his body. It was the perfect moment to disrupt his continuous attacks and gain the upper hand. Rotating his body, he slashed towards Tyrone. Tyrone, who was about to attack Leonard, stopped midway as he saw the strange movement Leonard made while rotating his body. I think you should take a look at. The sword in Leonard's hand was covered by his body, so Tyrone couldn't see it for a second. And it was in that second that he twisted his grip, and the flame on his hand started converging towards the edge of the sword. When Tyrone saw Leonard's slash, he was not in a proper stance to defend that attack. So he used his sword and burst out his aura, but the warm air twisted the image of Leonard, making it impossible for Tyrone to quickly spot the point of contact. To perfectly defend and negate the attack, Tyrone needed to stop the sword by hitting it on a specific point. But Leonard knew it, and he purposefully hid his sword so that Tyrone wouldn't know his next attack at all. Slash. Tyrone felt a cut on his stomach, as the sword had already gone past before he could defend himself. Quote. What? Tyrone muttered as he was confused. Leonard took that moment to create another attack, and Tyrone had no choice but to raise his long sword. He was confused about how that sword went so fast that it could slash him. Even if the vision was not clear, the speed of the sword didn't make sense, but there was no time to think about what had already happened. He saw another big attack coming, and this time, Leonard didn't use his wind element. It was a powerful strike that Tyrone had no choice but to block. Dodging here was impossible because he would still get caught up in the attack, and with a wound like this, the match would be over. Bam! Smoke appeared all over the stage as they wanted to see the results, and when it dispersed, they saw Tyrone, who was still on his feet, but part of his armor was burnt. But the impact behind the strike had dragged him out of the stage. It was a good fight, Leonard said with a smile as he sheathed his sword. Voa! I told you he would win. The crowd erupted in cheer as Tyrone put his long sword into his space ring. Despite the wound on his stomach, it didn't look like he was in pain or in discomfort. There were burns and small cuts around his body, but that was the same for Leonard. I guess this is my limit, Tyrone thought. Even though Tyrone hadn't gone all out against Leonard, he knew that his opponent had done the same. There was no way someone like Leonard Tarvian would show all his tricks before fighting VILLAN. It was a good match, Tyrone said with a calm look on his face. The winner is Leonard Tarvian, who will be going into the finals to face the rank 1 Raylan Whiteheart, Gazel announced. What a clever trick, Zerax said out loud. Every one of them had seen Leonard's trick, which allowed him to go past Tyrone's block ahead of time. Using wind element to push his sword forward, Zerax said. One wrong move and his arm would have been dislocated due to that technique, Dexter pointed it out. The force behind that attack was enough to push that sword out of his hand and even dislocate his shoulder at the same time. He had manipulated wind element just enough so that he could control it, but if things went wrong, it would have been him who would have lost. Either he is confident in himself or simply foolish to that, Zerax said out loud. But knowing he is your son, it would be the first case, Zerax let out a small laugh. Someone as crafty as Osbert Tarvian wouldn't let his son grow up to fight like a reckless maniac. What an exciting match, and the next match will be between the rank 3 Kiara Everett vs rank 2 Reese Williams, Gazel announced. Some of the strongest students of our academy, Gazel said as Kiara walked onto the stage, and on the other side, it was Reese. Loud cheers were heard because Kiara and Reese both had their own followers inside World Academy. After all, they were two of the strongest students after rank 1, Jaden Hargrave. It seems you are in a bad mood, Reese said, as he raised his eyebrows as he walked on the stage. Who would be excited to fight someone like you? Let's get this over with, Kiara said as she swung her sword in the air. Reese simply took out his own sword in response as they walked to their positions on the stage, contemporary romance. Why are they standing there and not fighting? Jennifer asked the third-year student behind them. Oh, they're increasing the strength of the barrier and the size of the stage for them, the third year replied. Both of them are rank hunters, so that much preparation is needed, he added. A rank, so they must be super powerful, Jacob asked excitedly. Of course, it is very rare to see a rank hunters in fourth year, the guy explained. A lot of talent is needed to reach a rank, but most people hit their limit by B rank, he said. Not everyone had the talents needed to reach a rank. Although one could push himself past his limit, he couldn't go too far, contemporary romance. If the vessel is not big enough, pouring a huge amount of water into it will be useless. Most students in World Academy developed their mana core very carefully, but not everyone was different. The quality of the mana core, or the mana heart itself, was important. Most students in the 4th year were rank B, but some had reached their limits at rank C. Kiara Everett, Reese Williams, and Jaden Hargrave. These three are the strongest students of World Academy currently, he told the twins. Many students loudly cheered for both Reese and Kiara. Both of them were famous in the World Academy, as not only were they strong and from powerful families, but their appearance was also eye-catching. Reese had light blue hair, which was a distinct feature of the Williams family, while Kiara had small stripes of blonde hair around her long black hair. Kiara was also taller than other female students, with a height reaching 5'11 feet. Both of them had opposite personalities that they showed out in public. While Kiara had a very strong temperament and a strict side, she showed in public. Her personality made it harder for others to approach her out of fear of offending her. But Reese was the exact opposite. Despite being the heir of the Williams family, Reese Williams came across as a humble person based on his manners and way of talking. He was like Leonard Tervian, but Reese went the extra mile to make sure his public opinion remained the same. All the elite families had their businesses, and just like Greville, the Williams family was also involved with mana crystals. Although they couldn't be compared to the Abyss Corporation, they were not small either. "We've been friends for 4 years now, so let's make the most out of this match," Reese spoke as he looked at Kiara. "TCH, his way of talking really makes me wanna punch that face," Kiara muttered to herself. Because Kiara had faced many people who hid their intentions while presenting themselves in front of her, she had developed a strong hatred for such people. In Halcyon, the number of people who would want to manipulate her, someone who was most likely to become the next Archduchess of the Everett family, was not small. Ads by Pub Future. She had met many such people in her life, but Reese was different. At first, even Kiara partially believed the personality that Reese showed was his true nature. She was taught never to place trust in others, no matter how close they were. But it was only near the end of the 2nd year, during the start of their 3rd year, when they entered trials ground, that she got to know that the personality Reese showed was nothing but a farce. "Let's get this over with," Kiara said. Her aura took over the whole stage. It was so much that her aura was visible to other students. The strength of AA rank hunter was no joke. In response, Reese simply countered with his own mana as he pushed back Kiara's aura back. Kiara was a rank hunter, but both Reese and Jaden had finally managed to reach a rank during the last year of World Academy. She was at a disadvantage, but it was still better than Reese and Jaden reaching peak A rank, which would have been a very big achievement. At A+ rank, major changes would happen to the mana heart, causing it to grow bigger and denser. Most people would be stuck in a rank for years in their lives before reaching A+ rank. And breaking through A+ rank was even harder than that. There was a high chance of a person dying while breaking through to the S rank because of the process it took to go beyond A+ rank. If someone were not sure they could go beyond A+ rank, it was simply suicidal to even try it. The only person to ever reach A+ rank while they were in World Academy was Eva Greville. In comparison, Jaden and Reese had just reached a rank, and Kiara was sure they had both used an S-rank mana gem to reach that level. "I think you should take a look at." She had seen both of them 3 months ago, and they were around her level. And to reach this level so quickly, it wasn't hard to predict what they did. Although other students, including Kiara, couldn't sense the SSS rank hunters present here, they could sense that Reese didn't have the stable mana of a rank hunter. Using mana gem was important to break through, but it had its own downsides. That was the period of time it took to stabilize that mana into your mana core perfectly. Right now, some of the mana was being wasted, so Reese wasn't a true A rank hunter, and at best, both Jaden and Reese were at the earliest stage of stepping to a rank. The referee stood beyond the barrier that covered Kiara and Reese and the whole stage. 3, 2, 1. Start. The referee said out loud as both Kiara and Reese disappeared from their places. They appeared in the air. Kiara swirled in the air and struck Reese, who simply flicked his wrist to counter Kiara's strike. Before coming to the ground, their sword met each other 17 times, making huge impact forces that could be felt through the vibrations that made their way past the barrier. Students could feel the strength behind each of these strikes, and it was a completely new experience for the first-year students. They couldn't even see the movements that Kiara and Reese were making. Only the moment they would stop for half a second when their swords connected was the time they could see them. No wonder they changed the whole barrier, Damien muttered. He could feel the vibration of mana that was being produced by the clash of the aura of two A-rank hunters. Not bad. She carries the fierce personality of the Everett head, Dalton spoke. But Williams here also knows what he is doing, Dexter replied. The young generation seems more fierce this time around, Dexter said. The last time such a thing happened was when Arthur and David were in World Academy. Bam! A huge aura clash erupted as Kiara's hair fluttered in the air, and her sword was pushing Reese. Kiara was going all out from the start. There was no need to rely on tricks to face Reese or Jaden because she knew how both of them fought. It was useless for her to stretch the fight unnecessarily. Despite her personality, Kiara often tried to stay out of unwanted trouble. And that was why she wasn't serious about winning this match. Although winning would have been nice, it wasn't worth the trouble going against someone crazy like Jaden and Reese. Both of them were obsessed with winning this match, and Kiara had heard about it. Jaden's reasons were clear, but she didn't know why. Reese was trying so hard to take rank 1. The aura around Kiara started getting brighter as Reese pushed Kiara's sword back. They are not using any sword techniques, Damien noticed as he looked at Asher, whose eyes were glowing. Asher was currently using his mana to improve his eyesight to check the movements of both Kiara and Reese. Some of them were missed, but Asher could still see them move around. Damien knew about the technique Asher was using, but he couldn't do it as it required extreme mana control. Bam! Bam! Even without seeing Kiara and Reese, they could feel the blow they were exchanging. Each time those two swords would collide, the mana would vibrate around them. It seems you have gotten sharper, Reese said as he brought his sword down. Reese noticed Kiara's movement, and he had studied Everett's family's sword art. But Kiara's strength was the way she could shift her style to a more rogue one. It threw people off, and even someone like Jaden acknowledged that Kiara Everett was a tricky opponent to fight. That girl is not serious about it, Zerax muttered as he noticed it. TCH, no wonder they don't have a SSS rank hunter, Zerax mocked Halcyon, but nobody commented on it. Hargrave family only respected the strong, so Zerax disliked anybody who didn't try their best to win a fight regardless of their chances. Normally, in a fight between a rank hunters, especially between weapon users, there was a lot of time, and people would show opening intentionally. And this is what Reese was doing right now, but Kiara had no interest in punishing Reese for it. The chances of winning favored Reese heavily, so he was making Kiara rush for a move that could guarantee her win, but she wasn't taking the bait. Reese switched up his pace as his aura became stronger and his movement became sharper. Kiara, on the other hand, was matching Reese's rhythm. Reese made a powerful strike, making Kiara dodge it. Both of them were utilizing the entire stage as they went from one end to another. Kiara would always swiftly change the direction of her back, so she was never pushed towards the boundary. Kiara Everett was a hunter who excelled in an environment where she had the support of other hunters around her. But in a one-on-one scenario, Reese was still stronger. She had no choice but to carefully choose which way she moved and constantly change it so that Reese couldn't corner her. Reese was intentionally giving Kiara a chance to counterattack him even now. It seems like she will not take the bait, Reese concluded. But because both Reese and Jaden had seen Kiara's strength and fought her, they knew how hard it was to fight her. The odds would have been reversed if this was a team tournament. Because Kiara's specialty lay in taking advantage of the wide area around her, she wasn't as strong in a strictly confined space. Even though the stage looked very big for other students, for a rank hunters, that was still a small space to fight in. Slash. Reese slashed near the feet of Kiara instantly as his sword got countered by the first strike. Kiara jumped in the air as she got upside down while Reese twisted his body to strike Kiara, who stopped Reese's sword in midair. Kiara smiled as crystals appeared on her wrist. It was a special usage of earth elements that Kiara could do. Kiara could use crystals to support her body at any moment and remove them the next. It was a powerful ability that allowed her to minimize any damage done to her. Earth element was the element Kiara had the highest affinity for. It was one of the applications of earth elements she mastered after years of practice. She used the strength Reese was applying on his sword to push her body back and land on the ground. Both of them stopped for a second as they looked at each other. "That's a troublesome ability," Reese muttered as he intensified his aura. "But can you defend against this?" Reese said as he dashed towards Kiara, leaving a trail on the stage. It was extremely fast, and Kiara knew the power behind Reese's attack would not be small. A formation of crystal armor formed around her, and it was something that all fourth-year students had seen. Kiara's crystal-created armor was something that she could utilize, and even use her aura to make it denser. Water droplets started to gather around the sword that Reese had in his hands. Something Kiara noticed, and as their sword met, those droplets became like sword slashes that Kiara felt around her body. Ads by Pub Future. Part of her crystal armor broke, but the crystals appeared again. Till Kiara could keep her concentration and mana, she could endlessly fill the broken part of her armor. Something that made Kiara a fearsome hunter, especially in a dungeon facing monsters. Kiara could react to surprise attacks or even protect herself from critical injuries, which made her the perfect leader to lead and command her party. In all the dungeon activities, Kiara scored the same score as Jaden Hargrave. But this was a duel, not a place where she could rely on her teammates. Each time Reese would move his sword in the same direction, those droplets would act as blades. Small wounds appeared on Kiara's hand. Reese was not stopping his sword slashes at all. Clang, clang, clang. Their afterimages were appearing everywhere, but it was obvious that Reese had gained the upper hand in this battle. He was not giving Kiara any time to think and disturbing her concentration to create a crack in her crystal armor to wound her. And it was working, but he was paying the price as well. If not for the aura protecting him, Kiara's sword would have almost made a huge cut on his body. Crazy bastard, Kiara thought as she kept deflecting Reese's sword. She made some distance between them and charged first this time. Kiara already knew how far both Reese and Jaden could go to win, and their previous battle was the perfect example. She knew that Reese would take risks while battling her, but he wouldn't push it unless Kiara did it first. Contemporary romance. Reese also knew that Kiara had no interest in the rankings, so he was also trying to end it as fast as possible. But both of them had their pride. Neither of them would go down without a fight. Flow off. Reese muttered something while Kiara was coming at him. He swung his sword in a full circle as water emerged around the area. But it was not normal water, and it was denser, very sturdy, and most importantly, it was enough to stop Kiara's sword. As soon as Kiara saw it, spikes made of earth appeared as Kiara stepped and slammed her leg on the ground. Reese stepped back gracefully, avoiding each of them. But while doing so, he noticed that Kiara was already within his close range. Taking a huge leap back, Reese took the sword beyond his shoulder and brought it forward, making a slash-like action. Suddenly, Kiara felt a sensation of danger as she jumped up. Boom! Reese's attack of condensed water droplets made an impact on the barrier, making a huge sound. Reese didn't appear hesitant to use killing sword techniques in this tournament because he knew Kiara would dodge. Due to how much time they had spent in dungeons, in dangerous situations, all the fourth-year students had honed an important skill that every hunter needed. And that was instinct or sense of danger, which was extremely useful in dungeons where any kind of situation could arise. She sensed that if the attack hit her, her sword would have taken a lot of damage. Both of their swords were ranked swords, and they were not enough to handle the attacks if it was on the level Reese used earlier. That's too bad, Reese said as he looked at this attack that had barely missed Kiara. He had purposefully done this when Kiara was coming at him finally, but Kiara managed to dodge it at the last second. So this is the level of World Academy. The students from other academies were shocked to see Reese and Kiara fight with their own eyes. It had been 2 minutes, and Kiara and Reese had both shaken the barriers multiple times. They could feel the movement in mana due to their fight. Kiara and Reese were merely 18 years old, and they were this strong, and it was shocking for students for other academies. Wow, They are still going on, the first-year student muttered. Yeah, no wonder they are the strongest in the academy, another added. The fight was still going, but Kiara had some wounds, and Reese was breathing a bit heavily. But it looked like Kiara was more tired than Reese. She had been moving a lot, making Reese's attempts to push her out of the stage useless. But that also meant she was tiring herself quicker. Using her crystal armor and keeping her concentration in such a battle was draining her. Let's end it this time, Kiara said as Reese stopped and swung the sword around him. The water droplets in the air stuck to his aura while Kiara gathered a lot of energy in her sword. The crystals around her body started to get thinner while the amount of mana in her next strike kept increasing. Flow of water, Reese muttered as he felt his body lightened. But suddenly, the weight increased, and it gathered around his sword. Both of them were preparing a powerful move, but Kiara was the first to open her eyes, and Reese did the same a few moments later. Kiara moved her sword slowly towards the sky, and Reese moved the sword towards his right side. One of them was going for a vertical strike, which used a special technique that hardened the blade. And the other was going for another deadly sword art technique. Reese opened his eyes, and the whole crowd was silent, but in the next moment, both of them disappeared as they appeared in the dead center of the stage. The unshaken will of the mountainous strike. Kiara muttered as she imagined the technique she had mastered till now. Both of them moved their swords, but it didn't look like much happened. In the next second, a sharp vibration in the mana was felt. Their swords clashed to create a huge disruption in mana around her. Both of these techniques were powerful, but one had to be stronger. And it happened, the winner wasn't clear. It was a good match, Reese said as he wiped the blood from his face. On the side, Kiara was present with both her feet just beyond the boundary of the stage. The winner is Reese Williams, and now we have all the finalists, Gazel announced. TCH, Kiara clicked her tongue. But looking at her few injuries despite fighting Reese Williams showed how good of a talent she was. Updaters note, I'll be spending most of today and tomorrow in the hospital, so updates will be irregular or paused until I get back. What was that move? I didn't even see their swords move. For most of the students, the final attack that decided the outcome of this match was not visible to them. The clash of two different energies and the impact that resulted in pushing back Kiara Everett. Well, this is how all fourth-year matches go anyway, one of the recruiters spoke out. Unless there was a rivalry present between the students, most of the matches didn't go into that extra length that showcased their full strength. After all, they were not fighting for their ranks anymore. Most of the rankers were satisfied with their positions, and they knew that they were in that rank for a reason. Unless someone was aiming for a higher ranking in their last end-year tournament, most duels didn't go too far either. Most of the matches that happened against fourth-year rankers were like this as well. However, that didn't mean they were not interesting to watch. It was visible from their fights alone how much experience they had after going against monsters and clearing dungeons. Both Kiara and Reese left the stage, and Kiara didn't take any help from the medics because the small injuries were not a bother for her. Her body was capable of healing such minor wounds itself, and if needed, she could take a portion she had herself. Kiara, Jodie said as she saw Kiara enter her VIP room. What? Kiara asked as she sat on a seat. She tilted her head and raised her eyes, looking at Jodie. I thought you might be a bit sad losing, but it looks like I was worried for nothing, Jodie said as she smiled at Kiara. I am not some immature kid who has just joined World Academy, Kiara replied. And it was impossible to win against him, Kiara said, turning her head at the stage. All the rumors about him being weak due to him being out of World Academy because of an injury were fake, Kiara added. Due to the fact that Reese left World Academy due to some unknown injury, there were rumors spreading about him not being as strong as before. But fighting him herself, Kiara could confirm that it wasn't the case at all. Well, the finals would be interesting, Kiara said. After all, those two crazy bastards will go against each other, Kiara smiled. And we can finally see what would happen with the whole blood faction and student council thing, Jodie added. Yeah, that would be interesting as well, Kiara said looking at the stage. There were many students, especially the ones from strong families, who supported the idea of blood faction. In the VIP room where Damien and Amelia were, the conversation about the match was still going on. I will watch the match again in my free time, Damien said out loud. Because they couldn't see the full match, Damien wanted to watch the broadcasted version of the match in which you could see both Kiara and Reese's movement much more clearly. The match was broadcast in a way that even common people who didn't have the senses of a high-rank hunter could see and enjoy the match. And the last move, I didn't even know what kind of technique that was. Damien looked at the mark on the stage. There was a huge cut on the stage where both of their attacks met. Ads by Pub Future. At the same time, Gazel appeared on the stage. What an exciting match to watch, Gazel turning his head towards the crowd. But now, there are only 2 matches left, and both of them are the finals of the 3rd and 4th year, Gazel said excitedly. But the first match will be between Rank 1 and Rank 2 of 3rd year. Gazel announced. The long-awaited match against the Blood Faction and the Student Council, Gazel's words made students excited. As you know, this end-year tournament is to decide who will win among both of them, Gazel explained. The Blood Faction who want to change the ways of the current Student Council, Gazel said. Or the Student Council that doesn't want to make changes to the current system. This match was important for both Leonard and Raylan. Right now, Blake Cranston was the winner among the second year who supported the Blood Faction, and Asher Greville was someone who wasn't allied with any of the 2 groups. Both Raylan and Leonard had conflicts with Asher, so they didn't know what group he would choose to vote for. Get ready to see the match between the current Student Council President, Raylan Whiteheart, and the son of the World Association Chairman, Leonard Tervian, Gazel said while intentionally mentioning Leonard's status. 2 individuals walked on the stage as cheers erupted in the crowd of the students. Raylan looked calm as her white hair stood out, and her beauty attracted a lot of the gazes of many students. While on the other hand, Leonard wasn't falling behind her either. The Blood Faction members and the Student Council members were awaiting this match. Leonard maintained his smile, but he noticed the A-rank armor that Raylan had worn in the auction, and it was the biggest problem in the duel that was going to happen between them. Raylan had similar thoughts as Leonard had changed his sword to the A-rank sword he had bought in the auction. Just as Leonard didn't know about the armor, the same applied to Raylan, who wasn't aware of the sword's power either. You seem confident, Raylan said as she took her position. I am indeed, Leonard replied. The match will start in 3, 2, 1. Start, the referee said. As soon as the words left the referee's mouth, both of them moved, and their swords clashed with each other. Raylan had a talent of a weapon master, and she could use multiple weapons at the same time. But right now, her highest mastery was in spear and the sword. But she chose to use a sword against Leonard because she had won using a spear in the last tournament. But she knew that her spear art wasn't a good counter for the Remmer art Leonard was using. So she used the sword this time around. Both of them were B+ rank hunters, but Raylan had the upper hand as Leonard was pushed back a little with their confrontation. Not bad, Leonard muttered, but Raylan didn't reply. Instead, she stepped back and changed her stance, contemporary romance. She knew that Leonard had purposefully hidden many things in his fight against Tyrone, and the sword in his hand was something that Raylan was being careful about. Both of them couldn't afford to lose this fight. Suddenly, the fire started engulfing his sword. It intensified for a moment, but Leonard controlled it and made his aura denser around the sword. Due to the bloodline ability that Raylan possessed, her aura was more powerful than Leonard's. And he could feel the power behind her strike that was indeed a bit higher than him. There was no simple way to defeat someone who was the face of the Student Council. More than her beauty, Raylan was known for her strength. It seems I need to get serious, Leonard muttered as he swung his sword around him. Raylan took a deep breath as the air around her got humid. Raylan's highest affinity was with the water element, which allowed her to become the perfect opponent for Leonard, who had the fire affinity. But something strange happened as the water she summoned started swirling around her. She had already reached the advanced mastery, Zerax spoke out. Well, she has the talent of a weapon master, Dalton added. It wasn't the water that she summoned with mana, but it was the water that was attracted by her sword and the aura around it. To do something like that was considered an advanced mastery skill. But because Raylan was a weapon master, she was much more skilled than others at handling and mastering weapon arts. And right now, she was using a technique that was comparable to the third Rema art technique. She dashed towards Leonard, who raised his sword and got ready to defend against Raylan's strike. Tang! The water around Raylan's sword met Leonard's fire, and both of their swords clashed, resulting in a lot of steam being produced. But Leonard's fire started rising as Raylan stepped backward to make some distance between them. This time, it was Leonard who stepped forward immediately. Due to his wind affinity, Leonard's speed was higher than Raylan's. Something that allowed him to chase after Raylan he didn't want to give Raylan the upper hand in this fight because he knew how powerful she could get as the match went on. "You think I am afraid of your fire," Raylan muttered as Leonard noticed her sword moving. And like a wave, he felt Raylan's mana gathering around the edge of her sword, and with a single strike, Raylan forced Leonard to stop. A huge cut was made on the stage, as the water around the stage started vibrating. The ring in Raylan's hand started shining as those water droplets started rising in the air. She dashed towards Leonard, and as their sword met, most of the drop would follow Leonard. He could sense that the ring artifact that Raylan was wearing was helping her, but it was her aura that was making those drops of water dangerous. "It's getting annoying," Leonard muttered as he swung his around him. He caused a wave of fire to cover the stage, including Raylan, who was fine as she blocked his fire with a simple wave of her sword. But all the water on the stage evaporated, and Leonard twisted his sword as the air started gathering around it. "Now, let's start again," Leonard said with a smile on his face. "That's different from what he showed in front of Tyrone," Damien said out loud. Although it was hard for him to see each of their moves, it wasn't hard to see that Leonard's way of fighting had changed. Unlike Tyrone, he wasn't fighting with Raylan by using fire element, but he combined the effect of both wind and fire. Raylan looked at Leonard, who was moving in circles as the wind around them started to flow in a certain direction. Her crystal blue eyes circled around the stage following Leonard's movement as she stood still in the middle. Suddenly, Leonard's movement became faster as a firewall appeared around Raylan. Raylan could see traces of aura in the fire around her, so it wasn't hard to conclude it was another sword technique that Leonard was using against her. The firewall intensified as the wind on the stage became chaotic, contemporary romance. Raylan's white hair started fluttering, but from her expression, it didn't look like she was bothered by Leonard's move. She had expected him to reach certain mastery in both the elements, witnessing the duel between Tyrone and Leonard. And right now, she was seeing the skill of Leonard Tervian, who had mastered both fire and wind and incorporated them into his Rema art. Leonard became visible as Raylan summoned the water drops around her, but they started moving with the flow of wind that Leonard created. "Not bad," Raylan said out loud as she intensified her aura. Her aura made cracks on the stage and made a shell around her that made it difficult for the wind to flow uncontrollably around her. Swinging her sword around, Raylan's aura followed the movement that she was making. After taking a deep breath, Raylan rotated her right foot and titled her upper body as her eyes circled around following the movement of Leonard. In a second, Raylan, who was on her spot, disappeared, leaving a mark on the stage as the loud sound of sword clashing started vibrating around the arena. Clang, clang, bam. Although most students couldn't see their complete movements, they could see the effect of their clashes that were appearing all around the stage. Loud sounds of two metals colliding with each other were resonating, but only sparks made of aura were appearing amidst the storm-like wind that Leonard had created. Raylan could feel the flames that powered Leonard's strike. But currently, Raylan wasn't too focused on defending against Leonard's attack. She had a rank armor, one of the most coveted things in the end-year tournament, but Leonard had a rank sword artifact to counter it. So even if she wasn't worried about getting any fatal injuries, she was being careful while following Leonard's movement carefully. Both of them were reluctant to show their trump card first, as they would be at a disadvantage if they failed. Ads by Pub Future. Raylan turned around as Leonard felt a strike coming from his side. Immediately, he switched the sword around his hand, holding it downwards towards his legs, blocking Raylan's attack. It created an opening on the right, as Raylan covered her leg in aura and kicked his right side, which was exposed. Using the pressure she was applying on the sword that Leonard was blocking, she turned her body quickly. Leon flared his aura to protect him, and Raylan felt slight burns around her leg, but she went with the attack. Bam! A loud sound of their aura clashing was made as Leonard was pushed to the side as he felt pain in his right side. Fortunately, his hand was fine, so he could still go on, but Raylan had successfully gained the upper hand in this battle by this move. Whoa, that's the student council president for you. Raylan, Raylan. Many student council members were cheering for Raylan, especially among the third years. But things didn't look for the Blood faction members. For the first time, the smile on Leonard's face faded as his light blue eyes stared at Raylan. I played around too much, Leonard muttered as he swung his sword in the air several times. Fourth tremor, Leonard said as the air around him changed. He used this exact technique to defeat Tyrone, and seeing that Raylan also got serious as her stance changed. The fire around Leonard turned denser, and it got hotter and even more dangerous. It was through extreme control he was making it revolve around his limbs. I think you should take a look at. As Leonard took another step forward, both of them disappeared from their positions as their swords clashed in the air. Before descending down, Raylan and Leonard constantly exchanged blows, but something about Leonard's way of fighting had changed. She could feel his sword had become sharper and more powerful. But there was one thing different from what Leonard did with Tyrone. Unlike his previous match, this time, it was not only fire he was using with Rema art. Although not much, Raylan could sense the faint wind manipulation that Leonard was doing around them. It would make his strike speed faster or slower, making it unpredictable. It was getting harder to predict, but after the final exchange of strikes, both of them landed on the ground. Immediately, Leonard rushed forward as the flames around his limbs crept on the sword. The dark blue sword stood out as flames covered all around its blade. It was a rank artifact, so it even strengthened Leonard's fire, as it could resonate with mana pretty well. It was a passive ability of the sword that was perfect for Leonard as it fitted with his fighting style. Maybe it's time, Raylan thought as she felt Leonard's fire were becoming stronger. Such an intense amount of heat was something that she couldn't handle if Leonard got a direct hit. And even with the armor, it wasn't worth the risk. After all, it wasn't the same for her, unlike Tyrone, who could withstand these flames with his own body. Asher was keenly watching the match, but he couldn't help but compare both of them and their progress till now with his previous life. And looking at that, he could see there was a slight improvement in both of their strengths. He remembered the duel as he had watched it, but it didn't go exactly like this. Maybe it was because of Asher's interference, but everyone around him had gotten slightly stronger, not that it made any difference to him. Raylan summoned the water around her sword as she dropped its temperature by a lot. It wasn't like ice magic, but she could do that much. Controlling an element could let people dive closer to things like an advanced element, but it wasn't comparable to people naturally possessing those affinities. And suddenly, Raylan, who was being pushed back, stopped as they exchanged multiple blows with each other. Because Leonard had the upper hand if she remained near him, Raylan would take 5 steps away from Leonard before rushing towards him. Leonard looked around and saw the white hair fluttering around, wearing the white armor that had a faint glow on the side. He wasn't aware of the armor's abilities, so he was being extra careful. Raylan hadn't used that armor at all, so there was no information about the effects the armor had. And without knowing those, going for a heavy strike was simply dumb in Leonard's eyes. That's why he was forcing Raylan to reveal it herself, but it wasn't working exactly as he wanted. Raylan's affinity with water was much greater, and her usage had gotten more refined than what he had imagined it to be. Just using flames wasn't enough, as even with small burns, using so much fire element required mana, and it was not like he had a massive amount of mana. Even Raylan knew, so she was dragging the fight to make Leonard make the first move. Both of them had similar strategies in mind and more of the reason why the fight was getting more intense every second. It wasn't much at the beginning, but right now, Raylan was using her aura even more, just like Leonard was doing with his mana. Suddenly, the fight was turning into who could stand on the stage longer than the other. All the seat holders were watching the fight without saying anything, but they could see the direction where this match was going. Just from their experience alone, the ending of this duel was coming near. And it all depended on who would show their cards first. Each duel was a mental and physical battle against their opponent. Without properly judging and knowing your enemy, it was very easy to make mistakes and pay the price for them. And right now, it all depended on who would be the one that read the moves of the other person correctly. Fourth Rema, Gale, Leonard muttered as he was the first one to break the balance and use the move that defeated Tyrone Martell. Suddenly, the wind around the stage became calmer, but Raylan knew that all that chaotic wind was circling itself around Leonard. Leonard relaxed as he felt the pressure of the wind element around him. Leonard's move was the same, but he was applying it differently. Rather than forcing his hand to perform an extremely powerful strike, he was pushing his own body with the wind element. It was a different application of the same move, but it also made the strain that he would feel much lesser. Although it sounded less effective than the move that defeated Tyrone, it required great mastery in manipulating the wind element. Raylan shifted her weight towards her left foot as she prepared for Leonard's move. Suddenly, she saw Leonard disappear, and her eyes instinctively looked at her left side as she stepped back. His speed has increased, Raylan thought as she immediately created some distance. The spot where Leonard's sword struck left a mark on the ground. It was certain, just by looking, that Leonard had gotten stronger and faster than before. Leonard took a step forward as soon as his feet touched the ground. Currently, he was utilizing the force of the wind around his body to move around and generate that much power, even in the normal strikes he would do. Again, Leonard covered the distance between them instantly as he swung his sword horizontally, making Raylan pull herself back, and she saw the dark blue sword pass just before her face. Leonard was purposefully aggressive to make a critical strike that could make Raylan show the full extent of the rank armor she possessed. But Raylan ducked forward a bit as she pushed forward towards Leonard. There was no reason for her to stay on the defensive and allow Leonard to control the match. Clang! Leonard pulled his hand to his sides as he blocked Raylan's sword, placing his sword horizontally in front of him. The fire around his body intensified as he tried to force its way toward Raylan, but she made some distance between them, not allowing Leonard to do so. The Whiteheart bloodline, Zerax muttered as he noticed how Raylan was fighting. It's an annoying ability to fight against, Zerax said, and it was true. Raylan's bloodline ability meshed well with her talent as a weapon master. The more their body got hit, the more powerful they got. Cumden Whiteheart was considered a powerful SS rank hunter because, in a deadly battle, he would get stronger each second. The more injured they got, the more powerful they got. Some people called it the aura tempering ability, in which they absorbed the aura, and it enhanced their mana meridians. That's why the more Leonard stretched this duel, the more his chances of winning would decrease. But that didn't mean that this bloodline ability had no flaws. The biggest flaw was that it required a lot of control over your aura and mana. Despite that, it shouldn't be used carelessly. Ads by Pub Future. Even Raylan rarely used it because it strained her body greatly, depending on how much she used it. Using aura to enhance your mana meridians also stressed the mana core a lot, which, if used badly, could cause permanent harm to their bodies. Of course, the more proficient she got, the better she could use this ability, but judging by the fact that she hadn't used it till now, it was clear she still had a long way to go before she could achieve certain mastery. Raylan dashed forward as she swung her sword around, pushing Leonard slightly. If someone wanted to compare her swordsmanship by looking at it, they would compare it to the flow of water. Although it looked smooth, it was unpredictable and lethal as well. Both of them had honed their swords at killing monsters, so it was easier to notice that each swing was serious. A single mistake was all it took for one of them to get seriously injured, but because of their level, they could freely fight each other like this. Unlike Asher, who had to purposefully hold back on his swordsmanship to ensure he didn't kill others, Leonard and Raylan didn't have that issue. This was the reason they could go all out, and the professors around the stage didn't stop the duel even if it looked like a serious injury could happen. You look tired, Raylan said as her sword descended on Leonard's sword. Her water element fought against his fire as she maintained the pressure on Leonard. This is not enough to make me tired, Leonard replied, looking unbothered. His mind was completely focused on controlling the fire and the wind around his body. Small comments like this weren't enough to break that concentration level. Leonard felt a large amount of mana around both of them as he could feel the droplets of water rising from the ground. The ring on Raylan's hand was shining again, but the glow this time was much brighter. The water started revolving around them as Leonard increased the wind around his body to repel anything approaching him. I think you should take a look at. It also strengthened his fire, but right now, Raylan and Leonard's swords were locked against each other. He broke out of the lock as he removed the strength on his sword and stepped to his side, allowing Raylan's strike to go down. Bam! A crack was made on the stage, but Raylan ignored it as she rotated her body and swung her sword to the left side. Clang! Due to her quick actions, her sword met Leonard, who was striking her from the sides. Contemporary romance. Raylan's reaction speed was among the highest in the World Academy, so it was hard to catch someone like her off guard. Even in a situation where her back was open to Leonard, she quickly made an attack, anticipating an attack from him. It was a little gamble she took because if Leonard hadn't struck at her, she would have created another opening that he could have taken advantage of. But Leonard pushed Raylan's sword, making her step back quickly and change her stance. Raylan was expecting Leonard to strike her again, but something strange happened as she felt something come from right behind her. It was too late. She couldn't react, but a spear-like structure originated from the crack, which made a huge wound on her back. Many students got worried as they saw the spear approach Raylan's back, but suddenly, the jewel on her armor lit up, making a shield-like structure and blocking the spear. Bam! What was that? Where did that spear-like thing come from? People were confused, but Raylan didn't have time to figure out what had happened. She saw Leonard disappear, and instantly, a sword appeared before her face. Raylan twisted her grip as she used one of her defensive techniques and swung her sword from the ground towards the Leonard figure that appeared before her. Leonard blocked the strike midair but was pushed back as he landed a bit away from her. Raylan turned back as she swung her sword at the spear, shattering it into multiple pieces, and her eyes turned to look around Leonard's hand. Certainly, his bracelet had a glow as soon as the spear got destroyed. It was an artifact indeed, but Raylan didn't know what its limits were. She had her eyes on every single A-rank artifact, so it was obvious that it was some B-rank artifact because she didn't remember anything that looked like this among the A-rank artifacts that came out in the auctions for the past 2 years. Your armor seems tough, Leonard smiled as he finally saw how that armor worked. Seeing that it could stop the attack that even Raylan was surprised by made it clear that it stopped any threat that could make its way toward the person who wore it. Leonard dashed towards Raylan, and she was pushed back this time, as Leonard used a lot of strength behind this one strike. And as soon as Raylan was about to charge towards him, she felt 2 spears coming at her. This time, there was no crack in the ground, but those 2 spears erupted insanely fast out of nowhere. Raylan used her sword to shatter one of them, and the other one she had used the armor to stop it. Not bad, Leonard smiled as the grayish bracelet on his hand lit up a few times. Raylan didn't know if the artifact could produce these dangerous spears out of nowhere, but it was an insanely powerful artifact if it could. Because she knew after destroying 2 of them how hard she needed to strike it. But she was wrong about that. The seat holders had already noticed it, and it wasn't that the bracelet could produce those spears out of thin air. If it could, it would have been a S-rank artifact that used spatial element, but this one was not that powerful. Instead, it was Leonard who set this all up. Yes, Leonard was the one who spread tiny pieces of metal around the stage when he ran around Raylan. Because she was busy tracking his movements, she missed the small pieces that fell out of the bracelet. And they were the source of the spears erupting from the ground. Raylan had her suspicions because the artifact seemed too powerful even for a rank artifact, so she decided it was better to use everything now. Because she was forced to use her armor artifact 2 times in a row, it wasn't looking good for her because she didn't know how many more of these spears Leonard could make out of nowhere. Heart of White, Raylan chanted as her eyes glowed and her aura became denser. Heart of White was the name of the technique used in the Whiteheart family. It was the combination of weapon art and their bloodline ability. The smile on Leonard's face faded as he got serious himself because he was waiting for her to use this the whole time. Isn't that the same technique that defeated Leonard Turvian last time? Many third-year students recognized that stance because they were aware of Raylan's strongest technique that made her the rank 1 student among all third year. Heart of White was the reason Leonard lost the last time, but this time, it was an even bigger problem for him. Not only had Raylan reached the peak of B rank, unlike when they were in C rank in their second year, but she had also increased her mastery of her bloodline ability. Suddenly, the mana on the stage got rampant as it started revolving around Raylan. Her sword had a faint glow of her aura, which had become denser as her eyes were glowing. She was currently using her bloodline ability, which meant she was finally going all out against Leonard. Right now, the match was pretty balanced, but to counter the strange artifact he possessed, Raylan finally used it. Leonard rotated his left leg slightly, shifting his weight to prepare for Raylan. He remembered the last time he had lost was because of this ability only. But this time, the stakes were much higher: contemporary romance. If Leonard lost, the blood faction was pretty much gone. And the power they have acquired till now would go away as well. Raylan took a step forward as her aura resonated on the ground. She wanted to remain conscious of the stage boundary at all times. Using her bloodline ability, she would get stronger, but there were downsides that came with it as well. And that was the gradual loss of your other motives except until a single one was left, and it was to defeat your enemy. She wouldn't lose herself and become a monster, but getting carried away while using her bloodline ability was an issue she needed to deal with. As soon as her aura covered the stage, she determined the position of Leonard, who was waiting for her move. She disappeared from her spot, leaving a trail of faint blue energy. Leonard's eyes tried to follow Raylan's movement as he raised his sword. Tang! A huge sound of two metal colliding with each other was heard. Raylan looked fine, as her armor had a faint glow, while Leonard's fire was increasing, even melting the stage around him. Instead of backing away, Raylan turned her body and tried to slash Leonard's sides, but he was quick to react. Leonard immediately blocked as he raised the wind element around his body to push Raylan away. But instead of backing away, Raylan took half a step back and rushed towards Leonard. Clang, clang, clang. Each time Raylan would strike, Leonard would feel the power behind each of her sword strikes. The way Raylan handled her sword had changed a lot. It looked like a completely different sword art, but it was simply the most effective way she could use her sword to maximize the use of her bloodline ability. The aura around her was getting denser, and it was slowly getting absorbed into her body. If she got wounded, the process would get faster, but even now, it was slowly affecting her mana core. Her mana core was using more mana, and she could bring out more of her power. Ads by Pub Future. There was a reason why Whiteheart family was able to take the spot of the Garcia family, and their bloodline ability was one of the biggest reasons. It will be hard for him, Xerax commented with a curious look. He wanted to see how would Osbert Tervian's son face this situation. After all, right now, Raylan Whiteheart had all the advantage in this duel. Xerax knew about Cumden Whiteheart's bloodline ability, so he knew that the more the duel went on, the more powerful she would get. If Leonard didn't have any plans or tricks, his loss was inevitable. But it was too soon to say that. Osbert remained quiet without showing any emotions on his face. The rest of the seat holders were also the same. For them, seeing Raylan and Leonard fight was almost like seeing two 5-year-olds fighting. They could see every flaw and every single error both Leonard and Raylan would make each second they even moved a muscle. But despite that, they found this match intriguing, like other rankers matches, because compared to other hunters of the same rank, these children were way stronger. Even the guild recruiters and evaluators were amazed to see such a performance from B-rank hunters. Tang! Their swords met with each other as Raylan tried to push Leonard back. But Leonard increased the flame wrapping around him to push back Raylan. TSK, Leonard found it annoying as the armor Raylan was also blocking his flames and wind element techniques. Is it an elemental armor? Leonard tried to guess its abilities, and he was not wrong with his guess. Seeing how Raylan wasn't using her water element techniques made him think that the armor's properties were to absorb the elements around it. Because of that property, Raylan did not need to use the water element to counter Leonard's fire, and she could focus on using her Heart of White technique. Leonard felt the pressure from Raylan increase as he pushed back and saw Raylan duck and go past him as he felt a cut on his side. Slash. It was a big wound, not a small one either. I think you should take a look at Because Leonard was pushed back, he couldn't block it in time, as he touched his sides to see the blood coming out of his armor. Needle strike was one of the techniques that was part of the Heart of White that she learned. Just like its name, it was more suited for spear art, but it could be used with a sword as well. Drip. Leonard's blood flowed, and he used his aura on the wound to stop the bleeding temporarily. He looked at Raylan, who looked a bit tired. Because of the fact her mana core was exhausting more mana quickly, she was getting tired. But despite that, she didn't have any major injuries on her. Unlike Leonard, not stopping and giving Leonard time to gather himself, Raylan circled around him as she dashed towards him. Her sword flowed in a wave-like manner as water materialized around the edges. She swung her sword, and an arc of water went towards Leonard, who rotated his body to his left and let that attack go past him. His quick dodge was possible because of his wind element. The arc made a mark on the arena's wall, which was protected by the barrier, showing how powerful it was. Leonard raised his sword as his eyes focused on the person before him. His sword moved, creating a swirl of fire to follow it, creating embers in the air around him. As soon as their sword met, Raylan immediately started attacking relentlessly. She specifically targeted his left side, where Leonard already had a wound, and it was becoming harder for him to dodge or block her attacks. Slash, slash. Slowly, smaller wounds were appearing on Leonard's body, especially around his arms, because Raylan penetrated his fire using her water element. Her armor was still protecting her from the damage that a normal person would have felt when they were near the proximity of Leonard. Slowly, people saw the match coming to an end. Leonard had suffered many injuries, and even though Raylan looked tired, she didn't have even a single wound that affected her ability to fight, which was not the case for Leonard. Tang! Raylan targeted Leonard's left side, creating an opening on her right shoulder. She didn't worry because even if Leonard tried to attack her, she knew her armor artifact would stop it. She was the only one who knew the limit of that artifact, so Leonard needed to be careful around such feints. He was forced to block, but due to the awkward angle Raylan struck, Leonard's hand flicked into the air, creating an opening. Raylan took her sword to her side for one final attack to finish this match. Everyone's eyes went wide as they saw Raylan move her sword in a horizontal manner. Was this the end of Blood Faction? Many third years who were part of the Blood Faction became restless. It ended a bit too soon, Zerak sighed as he saw the end of the match. The winner was decided. And it was. Crack, crack, crack. 3 spears from 3 different directions came towards Raylan suddenly out of nowhere. The bracelet on Leonard's hand shattered, and his dark blue-colored sword started shining. 5th Tremor, Tempest's Flame, Leonard muttered. 5th. Raylan heard the word clearly. Despite being in this situation, she was focusing on her attack, but hearing the word 5th made her feel a sense of danger. The wind combined around his sword, making the flame denser and stronger. All the flame around his body combined into his sword, while the hilt of the sword glowed as the blade started shining. The dark blue blade became even darker, coming close to the color black. The spears around her shattered as her armor made 3 shields instantaneously. But even her armor couldn't stop the sword from coming towards her as the 4th shield never appeared. A smile appeared on Leonard's face as he made Raylan fall into his trap. His sword came down as Raylan raised it, and her aura and fire erupted from their clash, covering the stage in flame and dust due to the chaotic wind behind Leonard's attack. On the stage, Leonard was standing with his right arm bleeding and his bones broken badly. But on the other side, Raylan crashed into the arena wall, with blood coming out the side of her head and her sword, which had broken at the moment of contact. She was barely fine because of the A-rank armor, but she had lost. And the winner is Leonard Tervian, Gazel announced as people were too stunned to cheer. The match was about to end with Raylan's victory, but somehow, it was Leonard who had won. Arrived at the latest chapter. What the hell happened there? Damien said as he couldn't believe what he was seeing. It looked like Raylan Whiteheart was winning, but something changed the last movement, Amelia replied. Both of them had no idea what had happened because, for them, the speed at which these two were fighting was simply too much. She fell into his trap, Asher replied. His eyes stopped glowing as he stopped using mana to improve his eyesight. Trap? Damien asked. He made her stand in the spot where he could use multiple of those spear traps, Asher said as his indifferent eyes looked at the stage. It was hard to notice for others, but he was focusing on Leonard the whole time. Even in his previous life, Leonard Tarvian had won the match, so he wanted to see if anything would go differently this time. But the duel remained the same, with a few things that went differently. Both of them were more desperate to win because, in Asher's memories, there was a separate tournament between the Blood faction and the Student Council. So, the fight between Raylan and Leonard wasn't this intense. But she had rank A armor, right? Amelia said after thinking about how the fight went. The armor blocked many of Leonard's attacks, including the spears. He calculated the limit of the armor while fighting her, Asher replied. Damien and Amelia squinted their eyes because it didn't seem that way. But Asher saw the duel differently from them. Even though his senses were stuck at rank C, he had reached a much higher rank than this. And just like him, the seat holders also saw it coming before the match ended. He purposefully let her attack him just to count the limit of that armor artifact, Dexter muttered. Osbert was quiet as he already had high expectations from his only son. TCH, it's just using the artifacts to your advantage, Xerax muttered. But he placed Raylan exactly at that position on that whole stage. That's quite impressive in my eyes, Dalton spoke out. In Xerax's eyes, Raylan was stronger than Leonard, but she got outsmarted by his tricks. And the clear winner of this duel was Leonard Tarvian. But that last attack, he paid the price for it, Dexter added as he looked at Leonard's condition. Even though he was standing proudly on the stage, his right arm was a mess, but it was fine because it would be fully healed in a month. It resulted from executing a move beyond his abilities, which was the price Leonard needed to pay for it. Ads by Pub Future. That move shocked Raylan and broke her sword and her defenses, making Leonard the winner. And that shock that Raylan showed wasn't unwarranted. After all, from what she knew, the fifth Rema art was something that Leonard shouldn't have been able to use at rank B. Even the fourth Rema art was him pushing his body to its limit, but only a few here knew what happened exactly. The A-rank sword had the ability to allow Leonard to use techniques that would have been possible only if he was an A-rank hunter himself. Asher knew about it because he had used the system to know the effects of the sword. Midnight Star, a rank artifact. Type, Sword artifact. Ability, amplifies aura and mana to allow the user to initiate a technique as powerful as the strength of the artifact itself. Limits, host will experience backlash after the technique is performed. It was a sword to initiate a technique, but after that, it depended on the wielder's ability to handle that much power and its effects on their body. With the match done, Farnes appeared on the stage and gave Leonard his rewards. The crowd loudly cheered, but some students were silent. They belonged to the student council, and Leonard's win wasn't a piece of great news for them. But on the other hand, the members of the Blood faction were already seeing their victory. After all, Raylan Whiteheart was the biggest obstacle in their path to victory over the student council, and she was finally defeated. Before the crowd got carried away, everyone heard the sound of a horn going off. Suddenly, many small flames appeared all around the arena, which was the sign of the final battle of the fourth year. Unlike others, for the fourth year students, it was their final tournament in World Academy, and this was the last battle to decide the strongest fourth year. Farnes, who was on the stage, didn't go back as he himself was going to announce the start of this duel. We have seen a lot of interesting battles today, Farnes said. As the principal of World Academy, I am proud that we could teach and guide this talented young generation for a better path. Farnes's voice made all the students settle down on their seats. Everyone who was talking about the last battle stopped as they listened to Farnes Calmont. Although the end tournament will go on, this will be the final battle for the fourth-year students, Farnes spoke. The final duel between the two strongest students of the current World Academy, Farnes said as he raised his finger, and flames around the arena started making a pattern. Suddenly, the insignia of the World Academy appeared just above the stage. Jaden Hargrave vs Rhys Williams, Farnes said as he disappeared from the stage. The crowd loudly cheered as this was the final duel of the fourth year, among the strongest. But before it started, the first years were told to sit a bit away from the stage. Because some of them were A-rank hunters, and for them, experiencing the mana waves from the clash of A-rank hunters wasn't good. Unlike Reese's duel with Kiara, where both of them were not going all out against each other, this particular duel would not be that way. And the reason behind that was Jaden Hargrave and the tradition of the Hargrave family. He was the current heir of the family, and Zerax Hargrave was here to witness the tournament. Losing in front of Zerax would be the last thing Jaden would want. Zerax Hargrave was obsessed with winning, even if it cost him his life. It was one of the reasons he kept fighting the SSS rank monster despite his nearly depleted mana. Jaden and Reese walked towards the stage as their mana clashed. Jaden had a wild smile on his face, and Reese still maintained his appearance because a lot of eyes were on him. But those who remembered their battle last year knew that the calm sight of them walking on the stage would become a mess. World Academy didn't stop the students from fighting if they still had the will to fight. Only if the professors and the judges on the side thought that the fight was over would they stop it. But that only happened when there was a big gap between the two students, but Reese and Jaden were equally matched right now. Jaden, who was walking among the loud cheers, looked directly at Reese. "Don't blame me for today's match," Jaden said, smiling at Reese. "Oh, we will see about that," Reese said, raising his eyebrows. "This match is more important for you than me, Jaden. Don't mess this up," Reese said with a low enough voice that only Jaden could hear him. It was a taunt, and seeing how Jaden's wild smile vanished, it seemed to have worked quite nicely. "You will regret walking on this stage," Jaden thought in his head, looking at Reese. For Jaden, losing this duel wasn't an option. Not only would he lose the support of the elders, but there was a chance that some people could question his qualification as the heir of the Hargrave family. This was the best chance to solidify his position once and for all. But Jaden didn't know one thing. Reese also needed to win this duel for the plan he and Leonard were working on. But apart from the whole crowd, there was one more person who was quite interested in the result of this duel as well. And surprisingly, it was Asher himself. He had his suspicions about a few things, and depending on the result of this match, he could confirm it. "On your positions," the referee said as he looked at Jaden and Reese. They took their positions with the swords in their hands. No artifacts were allowed in this duel. All they could use to win in this duel was their own strength, contemporary romance. In one of the VIP rooms of the elite families. "The pressure on him will be great," a woman said as she swirled the glass of wine in her hands. "You seem quite invested in this duel," Cassie, the head of the Hargrave family, spoke out. "Wasn't I the one that helped that kid become the heir?" Cassie said, looking at the red wine in her hands. "Are you offended I pushed your son out of that seat?" Cassie asked with a smile on his face. Hargrave had no reactions on his face, and seeing that, Cassie didn't push the matter further, but the smile on her face didn't fade. After all, she had seen many interesting matches this whole day. With all the shocking announcements and the performance of specific people, Cassie was looking forward to the award ceremony, a party to which all the rankers and the elite families were invited. The award ceremony, where the result of the Blood faction and the student council would also be announced. The barriers around the stage changed, and the referee stood a bit away from the stage. The duel hadn't even started yet, but both of their mana were already clashing. Both of them were waiting for the signal to start as they would clash with each other. Their last battle resulted in Jaden's win, but this time, they weren't using any artifacts at all. It was their own strength and wits they could rely on now. Apart from Jaden and Reese's personal interest, this duel was important for other students who joined their faction as well. If Jaden lost, the people who joined his faction would have to face the consequences and stick with their choices. In all these 4 years of World Academy, these students were not only building their strength but also building their network. Jaden had many strong people who had joined his faction, but Reese wasn't behind either. Even when he was out of World Academy, students who were on his side remained loyal because of Leonard and Raylan's presence inside the academy. Normally, this wouldn't have been the case as Hargrave was stronger than Williams, but Jaden's heir position wasn't fixed. And that was because he wasn't part of the main family. And Win Hargrave being in the 3rd year didn't help it at all. Despite being weak, Win still had the status of being the son of the family head of the Hargrave family. They had no way of confirming the fact that even his own family had given up on him. That's why Jaden despised Win's existence itself. Even when it was obvious he was being pushed by the Hargrave family just because of his status, people doubted whether to join him or not. But that changed after the performance Jaden showed last year. Each of his opponents got badly injured, and his dominant performance left a mark on others' heads. Jaden was sure he wouldn't have a hard time gaining support and gathering achievements outside of World Academy. But if he lost here in the presence of Xerax Hargrave, all the work he had put in to build a solid foundation in his family till now would crumble into pieces. The only obstacle in his current path was Rhys Williams. In the medical facility, Leonard was getting his hand treated while he was watching the match as well. "If we let you stay awake, it will hurt a lot," the doctor warned Leonard. "It's fine. Just block the mana meridians from my shoulders," Leonard told the doctor, making him frown. Blocking mana meridians allowed them to numb the senses of that particular area, as it would have been impossible for them to numb a B-rank hunter without giving him strong drugs that could induce such effects. Ads by Pub Future. "It might slow down the recovery rate," the doctor warned Leonard. "Go ahead and do it," Leonard replied, not caring much about it. Even if it took more than a month, it was fine because he didn't need to fight anymore for the next few months. Right now, it was more important for him to see how this duel went. Leonard wanted Rhys to win, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. But he needed Rhys to win by any means possible. Even if a few things went wrong, we just need this one win, Leonard thought. At the arena, "Start in," the referee said out loud. 3, 2, 1. Start. The referee was far away from the stage, but he felt the pressure of the clash between those two. As soon as their sword met and their auras clashed, it produced a lot of power. Bang! The sound was quite loud as Jaden stared right into Rhys's eyes. And Rhys was the same. Water circled around, and using his aura, he made another strike while taking a step back. He turned his body to the side, slashing down with his sword as Jaden stopped it easily. "You think these attacks would even hurt me?" Jaden mocked Rhys as he pushed back. "I think you should take a look at." He increased his aura, making cracks on the ground where he was standing. Despite the barrier blocking most of the power, the students could feel the terrifying strength of these two just by looking at their auras. Both of them had honed their aura quite a lot and faced multiple monsters in the dungeon. Fighting in extreme conditions made them into what they were today. Jaden dashed as he struck down his sword on Rhys as he defended against Jaden's strike, but doing so made a small crater on the stage. A smile appeared on Rhys's face, and the other fourth years felt that the scene from the last year was about to repeat itself. Even back then, their duel ended when the professors intervened as their injuries were too much. Jaden was declared the winner, but he himself was quite injured, just like Rhys. This time around, because it was their graduation, some students thought that both of them wouldn't go that far, but seeing both of them, it didn't look like they were thinking of ending this duel easily. "Both of them are above advanced mastery," Dexter said out loud, seeing their duel. "He is still far from mastering my sword art," Xerax replied. The Hargrave family had multiple weapon arts, but the heir was allowed to learn from Xerax, so Jaden had the opportunity to learn the sword art that Xerax used himself. But seeing Xerax's eyes, Dexter could see he was enjoying the duel. "Seems like that boy knows how to please that old man," Dexter thought in his head. Jaden's sword shined as he slashed it diagonally while Rhys took a step back. A cut appeared on the stage as Jaden immediately pulled his sword up to block Rhys's attack. Jaden's hands had no armor as they disliked the feeling of wearing heavy armor, but on the other hand, Rhys was wearing a nano armor that covered his whole body. Jaden's aura was violent, while Rhys's aura imitated the water element, contemporary romance. If Jaden had the upper hand in strength, Rhys was superior in agility. Clang! Suddenly, Rhys managed to slip Jaden's sword downward while shifting his body to the left side, striking his arm. Jaden saw the attack, and he backstepped immediately, but a small cut appeared on his hand. But unlike others, Jaden looked unbothered by his injury. His wounds started to heal quite quickly, and the bleeding also stopped. Hargrave bloodline ability, which had the power to heal their wounds. A regenerative ability that could allow Jaden to fight while ignoring minor wounds. There was a reason why Hargrave, just like Greville, was able to retain their position as the elite family for so long. The reason behind Xerax's fearless attitude was his ability to heal his wounds, which was the greatest among all SSS rank hunters that had similar abilities. Natural healing was different from the ability of Hargrave bloodline. Even B rank hunter with a high-ranking bloodline ability from the Hargrave family could match the healing ability of AS rank hunter. But having such an ability didn't mean that Jaden could take as many wounds as he wanted and rely on his bloodline ability. His mana was consumed to heal such wounds, and the more he was wounded, the more tired he would feel. Bang! Jaden disappeared from his spot as he appeared in front of Reese, and he swung his sword upwards. Reese looked at the sword as he used his sword to divert the direction, but it felt heavy. Jaden's sword, despite looking light, was getting heavier, and it was because of the two elements he had an affinity with. One of them was earth, and the other was an advanced element. Asher was looking at this duel while examining both of their strengths. But without using anything that could harm his own body or the time dilation skill, defeating Jaden or Reese was impossible. In a fair battle, both of them were too powerful if they were given the chance to use their personal artifacts that were all S ranks or above. But even in that battle, Asher knew he could win if he mastered his sword art a little more. Right now, there were exactly two nodes that he could see on the stage, each on both of them. And that meant that Asher still had the chance to kill them.